That Lass of LOWRIE'S by Hodgson Burnett. Chapter 25. It had been some time since Derek, on his nightly walk homeward, had been conscious of the presence of the silent figure, but the very night after the occurrence narrated in the last chapter, he was startled at his first turning into the Knoll road by recognising Joan. There was a pang to him in the discovery. Her silent presence seemed only to widen the distance fate had placed between them. She was ready to shield him from danger, but she held herself apart from him even in doing so. She followed her own path as if she were a creature of a different world, a world so separated from his own that nothing could ever bridge the gulf between them. Tonight Derek was seized with an intense longing to speak to the girl. He had forborne for her sake before, but tonight he was in one of those frames of mind in which a man is selfish, and is apt to let his course be regulated by his impulses. Why should he not speak, after all? If there was danger for him, there was danger for her, and it was absurd that he should not show her that he was not afraid. Why should she interpose her single strength between himself and the vengeance of a man of whom he had the best in their only encounter? As soon as they had reached the more unfrequented part of the road, he wheeled round suddenly and spoke. "Joan," he said. He saw that she paused and hesitated, and he made up his mind the more strongly. He took a few impetuous steps towards her, and seeing this, she addressed him hurriedly. "Dinna stop," she said. If you want to speak to me, I'll go along with you. You think I'm in danger." He could not see her face, but her voice told him that her usual steady composure was shaken. It was almost like the voice of another woman. "You never were in more danger in your life." "The old danger?" "The old danger, as is worse to be feared now than ever." "And you," he broke out, "you interpose yourself between that danger and me?" His fire seemed to communicate itself to her. "Th' harm is meant to be done is coward's harm," she said, "and will be done in coward fashion. It isna a harm as will be done you with fair warning in daylight and face to face. If it were, I shouldna fear, but the way it is, I say it shanna be done. It shanna, if I die for it." Then her manner altered again, and her voice returned to its first tremor. "It isna with me as it is with other women. You munna judge of me as you judge o' other lasses. What mightn't be right for other lasses to do is right enough for me. It hasna been left to me to be lass-like and fair and modest." And she drew her breath hard as if she was forced to check herself. "It has been left to you," he burst forth, "it has been left to you to stand higher in my eyes than any other woman God ever made." He could not have controlled himself, and yet when he had said this, his heart leaped for fear he might have wounded her or given her a false impression. But strange to say, it proved this time that he had no need for fear. There was a moment's silence, and then she answered low and soft, "Thank you." They had gone some yards together before he recovered himself sufficiently to remember what he had meant to say to her. "I wanted to tell you," he said, "that I do not think any enemy I have can take me at any very great disadvantage. I have prepared myself." She shuddered. "You carry summat?" "Don't misunderstand me," he said quickly. "I shall not use any weapon rashly. It is to be employed more as a means of warning and alarm than anything else. Rigganites do not like firearms, and they are not used to them. I only tell you this because I cannot bear that you should expose yourself unnecessarily." There was that in his manner which moved her, as his light touch had done that first night of their meeting, when he had bound up her wounded temple with his handkerchief. It was that her womanhood, her hardly used womanhood, of which she had herself thought with such pathetic scorn, was always before him, and was even a stronger power with him than her marvellous beauty. She remembered the fresh bruise upon her brow, and felt its throb with less of shame, because she bore it for his sake. "Promise me one thing," he went on, and do not think me ungracious in asking it of you. Promise me that you will not come out again through any fear of danger from me, unless it is a greater one than threatens me now, and one I am unprepared to meet." "I canna," she answered firmly. "I canna promise you. You mun let me do as I had done, for the sake of my own peace." She made no further explanation, and he could not persuade her to alter her determination. In fact, he was led to see, at last, that there was more behind than she had the will or power to reveal to him. Something in her reticence silenced him. "You dunna know what I do," she said, before they parted, "and happen you wouldn't quite understand it if you did. I dunna do things lightly. I had no reason to, and I has set my mind on seeing that the harm as has been brewing for long enough shanna reach where it's aimed. I mun have my way. Don't ask me to gie it up. Let me do as I have been doing for the sake of mysen, if for no one else." The truth which he could not reach, and would not have reached if he had talked to her till doomsday, was that she was right in saying that she could not give it up. This woman had made no inconsequent boast when she told her father that if deadly blows fell, they must fall first upon herself. She was used to blows. She could bear them. She was fearless before them. But she could not have borne to sit at home under any possibility of wrong being done to this man. God knows what heavy sadness had worn her soul through the months in which she had never for a moment flinched from the knowledge that a whole world lay between herself and him. God knows how she had struggled against the unconquerable tide of feeling as it crept slowly upon her, refusing to be stemmed and threatening to overwhelm her in its remorseless waves. She was only left endurance, yet even in this there was a gladness which she had in nothing else. She could never meet him as a happier woman might, but she could do for him what other women could not do. She could brave darkness and danger. She could watch over him, if need be. If the worst came to the worst, she could interpose herself between him and violence, or death itself. But of all this Fergus Derrick suspected nothing. He only knew that while she had not misinterpreted his appeal, some reasons of her own held her firm. As she turned the corner of a lane leading to the high road, she found herself awkwardly trying to pass a man who confronted her. A fine young fellow, far too elegant and well-dressed to be a Rigganite. "Beg pardon," he said abruptly, as if he were not in the best of humours, and then she recognised him. "It's Master Ralph Lascelles," she said to herself as she went on. "What's he doing here?" But before she'd finished speaking, she started at the sight of a figure hurrying on before her, Liz herself, who had evidently just parted from her lover and was walking rapidly homeward. It was a shock to Joan, though she did not suspect the whole truth. She had trusted the girl completely. She had never interfered with her outgoing or incoming. She had been generously lenient towards her on every point, and her pang at finding herself deceived was keen. Her sudden discovery of the subterfuge filled her with alarm. What was the meaning of it? Surely it could not mean that this man was digging pitfalls for the poor straying feet. She could not believe this. She could only shudder as the ominous thought suggested itself. And Liz, nay. Even Liz could not be weak enough to trifle with danger again. But it was Liz who was hurrying on before her, and who was walking so fast that both were breathless when Joan reached her side and laid detaining hand upon her shoulder. "Liz," she said, "are you afeard of me?" Liz turned her face around, colourless and frightened. There was a tone in the voice she had never heard before, a reproach in Joan's eyes before which she faltered. I didn't know it were you," she said, almost peevishly. "What for should I be afeard of you?" Joan's hand dropped. "You know best," she answered. "I didn't say you were." Liz pulled her shawl closer about her shoulders, as if in a nervous protest. "I dunna see why I should be. though to be sure it's enough to fear one to be followed in this way. Can I go out for a minute without... Nay, lass, Joan interfered. That's wild talk. Liz began to whimper. The chalk were asleep, she said, and it was so lonesome in th' house. There were no harm in coming out. I hope to God there werena, exclaimed Joan. I'd rather see thy dead face lying back little uns on pillar than think as they were. You know what I mean, Liz. You know I couldn't have caught up with you without passing that mon there, the mon as you have been meeting on the sly. God knows why, lass, for I canna see, unless you want to fall back to shame and ruin. They were at home by this time, and she opened the door to let the girl walk in before her. Get thee inside, Liz, she said. I mun hear what thou hast to say, for I canna rest in fear for thee. I amna hungered, for a pity thee too much. Thou'rt naught but a child at best, and the world is full of traps and snares. Liz took off her hat and shawl and sat down. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed appealingly. I hadna done no harm, she protested. I never meant none. It were his fault. He wouldn't let me a be, and he said he wanted to give me summat about the child, and give me summat to help me along. He said as he were ashamed of hisself to have left me without any money, but he were hard run at time, and now he wanted to give me some. Money, said Joan. Did he offer you money? Aye, he said. Wait, said Joan. Did you tack it? What would you have me do? Restlessly. There were no harm. Are you getting it on you? Interrupting her again. Aye, stopping to look up questioningly. Joan held out her hand. Give it to me, she said steadily. Mr. Ralph Lansell, who was sitting in his comfortable private parlour at the principal hotel of the little town, was disturbed in the enjoyment of his nightly cigar by the abrupt announcement of a visitor, a young woman, who surprised him by walking into the room and straight up to the table near which he sat. She was such a very handsome young woman, with her large eyes and finely cut face and heavy nut-brown hair, and despite her common dress, so very imposing a young woman that the young man was quite startled, especially when she laid upon the tablecloth a little package, which he knew had only left his hands half an hour before. I have brought it back to you, she said calmly. He glanced down at the package, and then up at her, irritated and embarrassed. You have brought it back to me, he said. May I ask what it is? I dunna think you need ask, but sin you do, I can answer. It's the money, Mr. Lansell, the money you give to poor Lizzie. And may I ask again what the money I gave to poor Lizzie has to do with you? You may ask again, and I can answer. I am the poor lassie's friend, happen th' only friend she has in world. Because God has made me the stronger of the two, I have stood by her, and because I'm the stronger of the two, I stand by her now, and tell you as I will not see you play her false again. The devil, he broke forth angrily. You speak as if you thought I meant her harm. He coloured and faltered even as he spoke. Joan fronted him with bright and scornful eyes. If you dunna mean her harm, dunnot lead her tongue-down ways o' deceiving them as means her well. If you dunna mean her harm, tack your belongings and leave Riggan tomorrow morning. He answered her by a short, uneasy laugh. By Jove, he said, you are a cool hand, young woman, but you can set your mind at rest. I shall not leave Riggan tomorrow morning, as you modestly demand, not only because I have further business to transact, but because I choose to remain. I shall not make any absurd promises about not seeing Lizzie, which, it seems to me, is more my business than yours under the circumstances, and I shall not take the money back. You will not? No, I will not. Very well, I had no more to say, and she went out of the room, leaving the package lying upon the table. When she reached home, Liz was still sitting as she had left her, and she looked up tearful and impatient. "Well," she said. "He has the money," was Joan's answer, "and he has shown me as he is a villain." She came and stood near the girl, a strong emotion in her half-pitying, half-appealing look. "Lizzie, lass," she said, "thou mun listen to me, thou mun. Thou mun make me a promise before thou tak'st thy child upon thy breast and eat." "I dunna care," protested Liz, weeping fretfully. "I dunna care what I do. It's all as bad as iver now. I dunna care for nowt. Everybody's at me. No one on you will let me a be. What with first one and then another, I'm almost drove wild." "God help thee," said Joan with a heavy sigh. "I dunna mean to be hard, lass, but you mun promise me. It isna much, Lizzie. If things isna worse with you than I would ever believe. You're safe so far. Promise me as you willna run in danger. Promise me as you willna see that man again, that you'll keep out of his way till he leaves Riggin." "I'll promise out," cried Liz. "I dunna care, I tell you. I'll promise out, you lass, if you'll let me a be." And she hid her face upon her arms and wept aloud.